Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Licensing Subcommittee on Monday, the 9th of February, and slightly delayed, but at 10 past 11. We're just going to go through some housekeeping, but first of all, I am Councillor Emily Stradwick and Chair of today's meetings. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts, and please assemble at Queen Victoria statue in front of the civic offices. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when you have finished. We will pass on to introductions. We'll do the subcommittee first. If I pass, yeah.
Morning, everybody. Councillor Stuart Brown.
Councillor Hugh Mason.
And then I'll work my way front to round.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Ben Attrell. I'm a solicitor employed by the council, and I'll be advising this subcommittee this morning.
Good morning, members. Derek Stone. I'm the principal licensing officer with a very croaky voice.
Councillor Charlotte Gerarda, without a croaky voice, and one of the objectors.
Good morning, Brian Morton, local business owner, one of the objectors.
Local resident Jim George with also a croaky voice.
Morning, everybody. My name's Mick Bowles. I'm one of the objectors.
You're up next.
Hello, my name's Roy Light. I'm the advocate for the applicant.
Good morning, Chair members. My name is Richard Baker. I'm the agent for the applicant. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Senthuran Kanaratnam. I am the applicant.
Thank you. Can we get anyone that hasn't got a microphone to get them a microphone, just because it'll be easier when you're speaking rather than leaning? Is that all right?
It does work.
Perfect. Members, any declarations of interest? No?
Chair.
Oh, yeah.
I have, in consultation with our solicitor, discovered I have a personal but non-prejudicial interest in that one of the objectors on the mass list is a casual acquaintance.
Just for clarification, Chair, I wouldn't say that it was even a personal interest, but the fact that you're declaring it, it's on record, and you've also confirmed to me that you're satisfied that you're going to approach the matter in an open and transparent manner.
Amazing. Right, I'm going to pass back to you now, Ben.
Yep. Also, just to note that there are obviously some ward councillors that have made representations, so presumably you'd also, all three of you, wish it to be noted that you're obviously aware of those individuals and that it won't affect your decision making today. If you could just confirm.
Confirm.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. So there is one slight technical issue this morning. To throw the cat amongst the pigeons before we even got started this morning. The applicants did submit some documentation in advance of the hearing. In doing so, that is clearly in compliance with the hearings regulations, which effectively state in terms that if it's provided to the licensing authority in advance of the hearing, then they are entitled to rely on that evidence at the hearing. But it's come to my attention that that documentation wasn't circulated to the parties for today's hearing. So I did ask for a 10-minute adjournment so that the parties could read through that documentation. It appears that one of the parties hasn't had that opportunity now. In essence, if I can just summarise what has been submitted, and unfortunately I don't have a full set in front of me because I've passed it to those objecting, but we have what is in essence a skeleton argument or a legal argument prepared by the advocate for the applicant, and then some documents which show posts on social media, which have all been published and are in the public realm. And it's been confirmed to me by those objecting that that they are aware of those, and so there's nothing new, effectively. There's no substantive evidence as such to be relied upon, and accordingly, and the parties have been offered the opportunity to read through that documentation, and in essence, having thought about it through logically myself, had the applicants attended today and presented this documentation at the hearing, it could have been submitted and relied upon had the parties here present today acquiesced and said, yes, that's fine. And so accordingly, having spoken to all those in the room, save for, I think, one objector, is there any objection from yourself? Do you feel that you would have needed time to prepare had you seen these documents, or additional time? No, okay. On that basis, my legal advice is that the subcommittee can continue to hear this matter. But of course, it's, I would urge the subcommittee a matter for you to consider and to determine after you've heard if there are any other representations on the point.
Hello, Chair. I think we probably should, just for the record, make a note of the Licensing Act 2003, brackets, Hearings Regulations 2005, and we're talking about Regulation 18, which says this: representations and supporting information. In considering any representation or notice made by a party, the authority may take into account documentary or other information provided by a party in support of their application, representations or notice, if applicable, either before the hearing, which is what we've done, or with the consent of the other parties at the hearing. So this information has been put forward. It could have, in my submission, have contained new evidence, because during the course of this hearing, if something has occurred and one of the people with representations wants to expand their representation by saying, and last week this happened, then they're perfectly entitled to do that, as long as it's not completely different. So in my representation is that we could have done that. Your legal advisors talked about setting a cat amongst the pigeons. So someone set this hare running, and I'd ask you to put it out of its misery, please.
The subcommittee are happy to proceed and are happy that all parties have no objections to it. So we were going to move on to the rest of today's meeting. Just in case some of you don't have a running order, how today's going to go is Derek's going to open the case, and then members that are on the subcommittee can ask him questions, yourself can ask questions, you can ask questions, and then we're going to move on to the applicant's case, and then we'll go on to other persons. I do believe everyone's got a copy of this anyway that they can refer to, and with that in mind, hopefully he's got some water with him. But Derek.
Sorry, Chair, just to add, at the end of all that, there is then the process of summing up with the applicant with the final say.
Thank you, members. So this is an application for grant of a premises licence at Kev Albert Road, Community Store 235237 Albert Road, Southsea. The matter has been referred to the committee for determination following receipt of relevant representations from local residents and ward councillors. The premises licence application has been submitted on behalf of Centra Retail Limited, and the licensing activities that have been applied for are the sale of retail of alcohol Monday to Sunday 7 a.m. to 1 a.m, the late night refreshment Monday to Sunday from 2300 hours to 1 a.m, and the opening hours of the store Monday to Sunday 7 a.m. till 1 a.m. The applicant has detailed in the operating schedule the steps intended to support and promote the licensing objectives, and these can be found in the redacted application form attached at Appendix A. And there's also a plan of the premises attached at Appendix B. Members, the provisions related to the grant of a premises licence are contained within Part 3 of the Licensing Act and associated regulations. Public notice has been given by way of press notice, a premises notice, and local ward councillors were notified of the application. So there are no germane grounds for the committee to reject the application for non-compliance with the prescribed advertising requirements. 235 and 237 Albert Road is located on the corner of Henley Road and has operated as South Sea Cycles for a number of years, but the actual premises closed during 2025, and you'll note it is located opposite Craneswater Junior School. There are no relevant representations made by any of your responsible authorities, and the applicant has agreed conditions with the police, which will be automatically added to the premises licence if it's granted, and you can see these agreed conditions attached at Appendix D for your reference. Members, we've received 175 representations in total from local residents, plus the 3 ward councillors. Although 120 of those representations consist of what I have referred to as a template representation with only the name at the end changed. Many of the representations are objecting to a convenience store opening, with some referencing that the area already has sufficient stores nearby, and they make reference to the Co-op, Sainsbury and Tesco. Need, however, concerns the commercial demand, and it is not a matter and it is a matter for the planning authority and for the market. It is not a matter for a licensing authority in discharging its licensing function or its statement of licensing policy, and this is made clear in the statutory guidance, and I'm sure you'll be directed to that during the course of the hearing. Other representations object to a store selling alcohol and vapes opposite a school and the location of a parklet outside these premises, which may lead to additional concerns. Members, you'll be aware that the Licensing Act 2003 regulates certain activities, including the sale of alcohol and late night refreshment. The 2003 Act does not regulate the sale of tobacco and vapes. The Tobacco and Vapes Bill is exploring introducing a separate licensing regime for the sale of such products, but at this present time, there are no licensing controls for the sale of such products. The licensing subcommittee is therefore unable to consider the impact of such activity. Copies of the redacted representations are attached at Appendix C. Members, when determining the application, you must have regard to the promotion of the licensing objectives. These are, as you know, the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. You also have to regard to the Licensing Act, the adopted statement of licensing policy, judgments of the High Court, which your legal advisor can assist you with if necessary, the current statutory guidance issued by the Home Secretary, in accordance with Section 182 of the Act, the representations including supporting information presented by all parties, and the human rights of all the parties concerned to ensure both a fair and balanced hearing and to consider any public sector equality duty. The Statement of Licensing Policy lays down a general approach to the determination of licensing applications, and any such application will be considered on its individual merits. Equally, any person permitted by the Act to make relevant representations to the committee will have those representations considered on their individual merit. The committee should consider the fundamental principles set out in the policy, and at 4.6 it says licensing law is not the primary mechanism for the general control of nuisance and antisocial behaviour by individuals once they are away from the licensed premises, and therefore beyond the direct control of the individual. Nonetheless, it is a key aspect of such control, and licensing law will always be part of the overall approach to the management of the evening and nighttime economy. The committee should have also regard to paragraphs 5.1 to 5.8 in relation to the circumstances where it may be appropriate to consider the imposition of conditions. 12.1 states, with regard to licensing hours, the government acknowledges that different licensing approaches may be appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives in different areas. The 2003 Act gives the licensing authority power to make decisions regarding licensing premise opening hours as part of the implementation of its licensing policy statement, and licensing authorities are best placed to make such decision based on their local knowledge and in consultation with other responsible authorities. However, licensing authorities must always consider each application and must not impose predetermined licensing opening hours without giving individual consideration to the merits of each application. The licensing authority recognises that licensed premises make an important contribution to our local community and that it has a range of tools effectively to manage the different pressures that licensed premises can bring. In determining appropriate strategies around licensing opening hours, the licensing authority will not seek to restrict the activities of licensed premises where it is not appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives to do so. The updated statutory guidance issued by the Home Secretary refers to the considerations of applications for the grant, and at 937, as a matter of practice, licensing authorities should seek to focus the hearing on the steps considered appropriate to promote the licensing objectives that have given rise to the specific representation and to avoid straying into undisputed areas. At 10.8 it says the licensing authority may not impose any conditions unless its direction has been exercised following receipt of relevant representations and it is satisfied as a result of a hearing that it is appropriate to impose conditions to promote one or more of the licensing objectives. Nearly finished. At paragraph 10.15, it states shops, stores and supermarkets should normally be free to provide sales of alcohol for consumption off the premises at any times when the retail outlet is open for shopping, unless there are good reasons based on the licensing objectives for restricting those hours. Members, lastly, if I just remind you on the review provision, paragraph 11 states that as a key protection for the community, where problems associated following the grant of a licence, it is possible to take out a review of the premises because of matters arising at those premises. Members, I don't think I need to say any more, and hopefully I'll stay quiet for the rest of the morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions for Derek at this moment? Yeah, go for it.
Just looking at page 23 of our document pack, which is part of the applicant's original application. I'm just wondering if you can clarify if it's a quirk of how these applications are filled in from a licensing perspective, but the actual timings that the late night refreshment is proposed. If I'm reading this right, it's going from a minute past midnight until 1 AM and 11 PM until midnight. So does that mean from 11 PM overnight into 1 AM the following morning? Or midnight until 1 AM the following day and 11 till midnight? Just wanted to clarify exactly what the proposed times for the late night refreshment are.
It was unusual how it was submitted, but yes, in effect, the late night refreshment is from 2300 hours to 0100 hours the following morning.
Thank you.
And Derek, just for clarification, if the police had any problems with this premises, they would be here today?
Absolutely, and part of the process in all good licence applications is there's engagement with all the local authorities, responsible authorities rather, in particular the police, so you can iron out any difficulties, and that's how we get to a position where you get the agreed conditions between all parties.
And am I right in thinking the conditions the police provided are pretty standard ones that they attach? There was nothing too drastic to what they wanted to change?
They are, we can't say the norm, because obviously each individual premises has, or potentially can have unique conditions added, but they are what we would say are pretty standard conditions, yes, nothing out of the norm.
Thank you. And then just one more clarification. You mentioned there's been obviously reference of we don't need this shop here and the type of shop. To stop that, that would have had to have gone through planning, not here, just for clarification.
That is correct, and planning, as you know, are one of the responsible authorities. There were no objections from planning, and I've spoken to or had confirmation from them. There are no restrictions on these actual premises itself.
And then just one more point, because there was reference of in we should be ashamed, Portsmouth City Council should be ashamed of themselves for allowing this application to come through. What powers do we have to stop an application to go through?
You don't. Basically, you don't.
Thank you. Yeah, Stuart.
Just following up on the planning question then, have planning confirmed that the premises already have the correct planning permissions granted for the use category proposed for the new premises? Or they also need to get a subsequent planning application granted for a change of use category?
The planning have said there are no restrictions on the premises.
Also jump in and just reaffirm that planning obviously is not a consideration for the subcommittee today. You're focusing your minds on the 4 licensing objectives.
I think we just wanted to highlight the fact that it's been mentioned quite a lot of times. So we want, and bearing in mind there's been a lot of objections, maybe they might not have turned up but might be watching, and they might have missed it with his croaky voice. So we just wanted clarification. Hugh?
Just for information, as a member of the Planning Committee, this would appear to be under the current regulations Group E, and it would be the same as any other retail premises.
Okay. Do you have any questions for Derek at this time?
I don't, and those are all very useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Objectors, any questions for Derek? No? Okay, we're going to move on to the applicant's case now. Whichever one's going to...
That's me, my turn. If we could use my hearing note, Chair, to assist us. The first paragraph tells us a bit about the background. It was a cycle shop, and as we've heard, it was closed about a year ago, I think January 25. So it's lain empty since then, and it's a good thing to be able to refurbish these premises, not leave them empty. As Derek has said, I think on page 6 of the agenda, the licensing authority recognises that licensed premises make an important contribution to our local community. And that's what's going to be put in here. It's, rather than being just left empty and left to deteriorate, Centra is going to spend some £100,000 on creating a modern, state-of-the-art community store selling a range of products. And contrary to what you've read in all of those objection letters, he'll be selling a wide range of products, not simply junk food and sugar. The plan is on page 35 of the agenda, so we could have a quick look at that. We've got some bigger copies if your copy's a small one. Yes. We ask your legal officer to assist in the absence of an usher. Can you read your one in the... Yeah. I hope I've got one now. I'll have one, please. I thought I'd put one in, but I haven't. Okay. Well, you can see the layout of the store there. The areas where there's going to be some alcohol are hatched in pink. And you can see that on the back wall there are chilled soft drinks and some chilled foods.
That's the front of the shop.
Yeah, the top of the drawing, which is the front of the shop. And then down the side here we've got chilled dairy, and then we've got various grocery provisions and just the general sort of things you'd find in a mid-sized convenience store, a range of products which local people want to buy. And obviously Santha will change the stock in response to people. If they come in and say, do you sell this, we'd like that, you start stocking that. And if you find something isn't selling, then they'll stop doing that. So they're there for the local community because that's their trade and that's their business. And again, contrary to what a lot of those formulaic representations say, we want independent stores. This is an independent store. This is a man who has this store and 2 other stores. You'll see there's CCTV cameras around the shop, and it's all very well laid out. We've got photographs of all of the contents of his other shops, but I thought probably your knowledge of what these shops sell is probably sufficient without me producing all of those. So the applicant would be the DPS. He's got 10 years licensing experience, and he's been a DPS for 8 years. So he's an experienced person. He's got 2 other stores in Cowplain. That's about 20, 30 minutes drive away. I've given the hours of them there and how long he's been running them from, one from 2017, one from 2024. He's had no problems whilst he's been running those stores, and no issues arising from any of the sorts of issues which are being raised in the representations. And importantly, in December of 25, on the 6th of December 25, and this is important in relation to protection of children from harm, there were 2 test purchases done. Well, there were more than that. There were test purchases done at stores in the area. And there was one done at Cow Plain Community Store, one done at Hazelton Community Store. People went in to try and buy alcohol, underage people. They were refused in both stores. So he's successfully passed both of those. And he's brought along his refusals logs, which show all the refusals that have been made, including one to a policeman who was in uniform, who was told he wasn't allowed to buy alcohol. So, you know, he does do things properly. Then we go on to Mr. Baker. He's a licensing consultant with vast experience for these sorts of matters. That's his guidance manual, which he's produced, and he's helped to put this application together and to advise on what should and shouldn't be done. And there are the responsible authorities. We're grateful for the advice from the police for suggested amendments to the conditions offered, all of which have been incorporated into the suite of conditions offered with the application. So if we could go to the conditions, please. The conditions are on page 158 to 160. Those are the conditions agreed with the police. And we can see that condition 1 is a CCTV condition, and it's quite a comprehensive condition. It covers all of the sorts of things that licensing authorities wish to see: CCTV, warning lights about CCTV, capturing footage, keeping footage for 31 days, and so on and so forth. Then the second, in the event of a technical failure, the DPS premises license holder must report the failure to the police within 24 hours. And then on to training. All staff involved in the sale of alcohol must receive comprehensive training in relation to the sale of alcohol. No member of staff should be permitted to sell alcohol until such time as they've successfully completed this training. And training shall cover all of the following matters. I, again, won't read through all of those again. Now, this is the point where I asked the committee if they'd like Mr. Baker to go through his training manual with you. Would you like to hear something of the training from Mr. Baker? He brought copies along. Yes? Okay, Mr. Baker, if you could we give one to the people behind us, please? Right, now he's not going to go through the whole manual. We're going to have a brief introduction, please, Mr. Baker.
Get yourself a microphone. Hey.
There we are.
There we go. Testing, testing. Right, here we go. The manual is split into 8 sections. The key sections for the process of training are sections 3 and section 4. So section 3 is where each member of staff is taken through or reads through this section dealing with the sale of alcohol, conflict management, underage, and challenge the licensing objections. And once they've read it through, the DPS would then go to section 4, and there are 5 different multiple choice questions. They can be used in any sequence. Some are 12 questions, some are 16, some are 20, with different questions on there. So the DPS would give each member of staff, say, about 20 minutes, half an hour to answer the questions, mainly multiple choice, but some written answers. And at the end of that time, the DPS would go through and mark those questions. In fact, Senthor has brought some he uses in his other stores along with him as an example, if you wish to see those. Any questions they get wrong, and I would say no more than 2 or 3, they would have to take the members of staff through and find out why they got those wrong. And if they got a number wrong, then they'll be expected to reread the section and a different test be given to them. This, I'd advise the client, would be a good idea when he's interviewing new members of staff, that they fill this in beforehand so he can gauge just the quality of person that they're taking on. And as a matter of course, every year they would undertake a refresher course. So using one of the other tests, the member of staff will be expected to reread section 3 and take another test on section 4. So the first element is the passing of the test, and just like if you're at school, the DPS will go through and mark it and score it, and that will be filed in their training folder, and they would have a training folder for each member of staff. The second element is, if you go to Roman numeral page 411, is a training statement. It's the yellow tab, and at the bottom you'll see numbers, and it's 4.11. Good. That's a training statement, and this is one for each member of staff to sign. So first of all, as in the case of Centre, you've got more than one store, you would have separate training records in each store. Even if a member of staff worked in more than one store, each store needs to have its own training statement for each member of staff. So it would be the store name, the address, and then they would read through this. I can read through if you wish, or no. You want to get out today. And they would date and sign it, or they would sign their name and print it at the bottom, and the DPS would then countersign that to say they've reached the required standard. And that is kept on file. And then finally, if we turn over page to 412, there's the authorization to sell alcohol. As we're all aware, the only people who can sell alcohol are people who hold a personal license, or those that have been authorized to allow a person to sell alcohol. Now, authorization could be verbal, but we would always prefer to have it in writing, so there's evidence of training. So again, there's a statement here, and this would be displayed behind the counter. The member of staff would have their name printed, they would sign it, the DPS will countersign it, the training level being the reference number for the document the quiz they took, and the date. So if you had, say, 6 staff, you would expect at the end of this process there'd be 6 signatures down there, and if you had no changes in staff, that would be the same the following year, and so on and so forth. Any new staff would be added on there automatically. There are various other checks and balances in there, but unless I can help you further, that's it in very brief summary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baker. Do you have any questions, Mr. Baker?
Yes, just to clarify, on your layout, is that 15 CCTVs that are being installed?
I thought there was more than that. 16?
Oh, no, I didn't.
He was actually going to put in about 20 or 24 cameras, but I thought he was going to have one for every can of baked beans in the business. But I thought there was 16. There's 2 at the back, 2 at the side, 2 at the front.
Oh, you're correct. I've missed the 2 bottom ones. There you go.
So
and
yes, you probably have more than that.
yeah, fine. And then you said that in the red is the alcohol sales. So from the looks of the entrance, you wouldn't be able to see any of the alcohol until you stepped straight into the premises. Is that correct? So it's not viewing from outside?
No, because the windows are going to be graphicked in anyway. So until you walk in the store, you wouldn't be able to see any of the alcohol. There may be graphics with, as you see on most stores nowadays that use the same facility. They have pictures of bread and sugar and fresh fruit and bags of sugar, granulated sugar, and fresh fruit and occasional beers and wines as well. But it's just to advertise this type of product that is a grocery store selling a wide range of goods and services.
I think the answer is no.
Perfect. And then there was reference that the gentleman has other premises. How long has he had these premises for?
One was 2017.
No, these premises.
Oh, these premises. Well, he's only just. When did you complete on the paperwork? last
No,
month.
there was references that he's had other licensed premises, so I just,
The dates are in my note.
yeah, just curious how long he's been around for and how much experience there is.
2017 and 2025, I think.
To turn 24.
2024, sorry.
No problem at all. Thank you. Members, any questions?
Yes.
Yeah, Hugh.
I have two questions. The first one is, will you have staff in the stores who are not alcohol trained? And if so, how will you manage the stores if people ask for alcohol of those persons?
They are all going to be trained with the manual, sir.
So all staff will be trained. Thank you. The second question I have is, Albert Road is notorious for shoplifting. I noticed that the spirits are well behind the counter. Will there be any closures on the red wines and the beers that, to prevent people just lifting them off the shelf and making a run for it?
There are going to be at least 2 staff on duty. One would traditionally serve behind the counter. The other one will be keeping a close eye on what goes on the shop floor. The reason why we've got external cameras there, and there's obviously going to be a monitor within the store, and if you notice the cameras are pointing in both directions, that if any known or groups of individuals that, shall we say, look suspicious are approaching, then obviously that puts the staff in the shop on notice just to keep an eye on what goes on. He has had the stores. He is aware of shoplifting. He's aware of shoplifting in this area, but he feels he can control it.
And there's also a need to go past the entrance to get out, past the counter to get to the entrance to get out. But I mean, I agree. I mean, there's no way you can be 100% shoplifting proof nowadays, unfortunately.
Well, can I
So
just clarify
just
the answer?
interesting
The answer to
how-
that question is no. Then is that right?
I'm just going to ask for no comment at the moment. Thank you.
I was just interested because there are some very determined people around to remove alcohol from the stores.
No, I'm absolutely sure there are, but it shouldn't be a reason for stopping somebody opening a business that somebody may come and commit a crime in that business despite their best efforts to stop it. And it would apply to all the alcohol sales in that road. But the point is taken, and he's grateful for that, and I'm sure he'll take particular notice of it.
Yeah, I think Councillor Mason might be making, because a lot of the licensing applications recently, it has been quite standard practice for the convenience stores to be putting locked doors onto their fridges. So I think that's quite a good question, and it's quite standard practice. So it was whether that was the intention or if that's already in place when he's spending this much on a refurb. It's
His idea, and it's not offered as a condition, but his idea is that he's going to see how things progress there. And if he feels it's necessary, he's going to have an NSIA trained person there. And I think they've got one in Tesco and one in Sainsbury's down the road. They don't have one in the co-op. Oh, right, okay. I'm just told that the door is fitted with an electronic shunt lock. Now,
As per condition 10.
which can be remotely activated from there. Now, the shunt lock can lock the door, and the advice, of course, is don't lock them in, because that's probably not a good idea, but lock them out so they can't come in. So that is being put into place as well. So they have been thinking about this between the Mr. Baker and the applicant, yeah.
yeah, Councillor Brown.
Just referring to the other premises that the applicant runs, obviously out in Cowplain is a much more suburban area than Southsea. What sort of steps are being made to sort of scale up the protections? Obviously, running a licensed premises anywhere has certain things you have to do in terms of the licensing objectives. Those are inherently more challenging in a city environment. So what steps are there being taken to scale up from your experience running a premises in a suburban area to one in a very built-up city environment?
Well, he's employed Mr. Baker, who has experience of both types of areas, and Mr. Baker's consulted with the police, who obviously have knowledge of this particular area, and in consultation, the police have said, we need to scale up the conditions that you've put in your application, modify them in this way, and those conditions are what have been done in order to scale up what's happening. A good question, and it's been addressed.
Thank you. And just making sure that the applicant is familiar with the significantly denser late-night economy in the Albert Road area compared to, you know, suburban areas like Cowplain.
Can't answer that.
Thank you. Members, any more questions? No? No?
Okay. We haven't got anywhere near finishing the presentation. That was, all it was Mr. Baker giving. Mr. Baker was taking us through the manual, but there have been questions about all sorts at the moment. So shall I carry on with the...
Apologies, that wasn't made very clear at all. I thought you'd finished. So yeah, carry on.
No, we're still on the conditions. We got to number 3, and then we need to go over the page for the rest of the conditions, if we may, please. This is at page 159 in your bundle. That was wishful thinking, Chair, I think. Right, so number 4 is the Challenge 25 policy. You'll all be familiar with that, ID cards. Number 5, refusals register in digital format. You'll be familiar with that. No alcohol above 6.5% ABV, and so on. Then condition 7, a written computerized record made of every incident of crime and disorder taking place, produced the local authority. So these are all the sorts of things that the councillor was referring to about the sort of area it's in. Spirits will only be displayed behind the counter, won't be self-service. Now, condition 9 is actually the same as condition 7. It's been duplicated for some reason when it's been typed out. And yes. So we can get rid of condition 9 and condition 11 because they're duplicated for some reason when they've been typed. And then we've got the shunt lock, which has just been mentioned. And if I could ask councillors if we could go back, please, to page 26 of the agenda. One of the conditions which was offered hasn't been reproduced by the police, but we think it should still be on there and be added on there, and that's condition 8 on page 26, which is the operating schedule. A notice will be displayed asking customers to leave the premises and the area quietly, so I think that should be put up, as there are concerns about possibility of late night noise. So if we could add that condition, please. Right, then we're back to the hearing note. Paragraph 6, all responsible authorities will serve the application, no reps have been made. And you've already asked this question, Chair, where an RA does not make a rep, it's reasonable to conclude that that RA does not have concerns about the granting of the licence. The Section 182 guidance underlines the weight that should be given to the views of the RAs, and I should probably read this out just for the record.
Just for clarification, RA is responsible authority,
yes.
just in case nobody...
Yeah. So I have got responsible authorities, paragraph 6, and then in brackets RAs. So, yeah, you're quite right. Each responsible authority will be an expert in their respective field, and in some cases it is likely that a particular responsible authority will be the licensing authority's main source of advice in relation to a particular licensing objective. For example, the police have a key role in managing the nighttime economy and should have good working relationships with those operating in their local area. The police should usually therefore be the licensing authority's main source of advice on matters relating to the promotion of the crime and disorder licensing objective. So that's the responsible authorities, no representations from any of them. Then we've got other persons, and they're from page 37 onwards. And we've got 175 representations and a further 3 from ward councillors. And 2 of those are worded identically. I don't quite know why that is. But if we look at page, you've probably seen this yourself already. If you look at page 37, is it 37? Yeah, 39, sorry. 37 is our sole one in support. 39, yeah, so 39 is from George Fielding. I don't know if George Fielding is here today. And his representation is exactly the same as Gerarda Charlotte, Councillor Gerarda. I think you are here today, aren't you? So one of them they either wrote them together or one copied the other ones, or they both agree with each other. But it would have been nice if we'd had individual ones, I suppose. Particularly if you've got 125, which are all exactly the same. There's one in support, and I accept there that if you could decide it on strength of numbers, then the outcome would be clear that our license would be refused. But it's not as simple as that, obviously. We have to look at what evidence there is, and we also have to look at the matters which were very well laid out by Derek in the agenda, things we should and shouldn't be looking at when we're looking at a licensing application. And significantly, at least 125 of the representations contain identical wording. Now, these start on page 153. So on 153, we've got representation at Appendix C, and then that representation has been submitted by 125 people, and all their postcodes are given just after that. And, I mean, various other of the representations are also very similar to the ones in Appendix C. So, for example, if you look at page 135, that one is almost exactly the same. There's already a high number of licensed premises and so on. And most of them, not most of them, but a significant number of the others are also variations on that one, which has been reproduced 125 times. Okay, further, the way in which a substantial and unknown number, but at least 125 plus of these reps have been obtained must be noted. Brian Morton, who I believe is here, is the proprietor of the Hunter-Gatherer Coffee Shop, which is a few doors away from the applicant's premises, and Charlotte Gerarder is a ward councillor, who's also a member of the licensing committee, and I think a deputy for sitting on licensing.
She's not.
She's not a member of the licensing committee? No. Ah, I thought she was. She's listed on her web entry as a member of the licensing committee.
We will double check, but
Right,
I haven't seen Charlotte on a licensing committee before.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I did look up, and I thought, and it was on there. Oh, right. You were a member at one time.
Back in 2021.
Right, so was a member a few years ago, so presumably knows something about licensing.
Is currently a standing deputy, but not a full member of the committee.
Right, so you are standing deputy of the licensing committee, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I haven't been called to anything licensing. No, I'm not a member of the committee.
Fine.
What I'm saying, I think, is that Councillor Gerarder has been instrumental in, it is a campaign about opposing this application. And if anyone saw the Facebook pages and they Googled the councillor, they would think she was on the licensing committee, because that's what it says on there. That's all I'm saying. So you would feel you could rely on that evidence from, or what that person said about licensing, because they're on the licensing committee.
Don't worry, Charlotte, you will get to interject after. It's fine.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we've got a Facebook post by the councillor, by Mr. Morton, and by another councillor, pictured in front of the premises with a byline, "We say no." This is Appendix A1. If we could have a look at that, please. We have a photograph of the two people sitting behind, standing in front of the premises, arms folded, saying that they've joined forces to oppose the proposed convenience store. And there are a couple more pages, and the reason they're opposing it is because it's opposite a school, and this store aims to sell alcohol, vapes, and processed food. So they're encouraging people to oppose the application on the basis that the premises are going to sell alcohol, vapes, and processed food. They're not licensable activities, vapes and processed foods. We've already been told by the licensing officer. So people who read that maybe have the impression that they make their objection on that basis. The location is directly opposite one of South Sea's largest primary schools. It's deeply worrying that they should sell alcohol, vapes and processed food. It says Albert Road is a busy thoroughfare for school children generally. It poses a serious risk to the health and safety and well-being of local children. Well, it doesn't do any of those things, because if it did, so would the Co-op, so would Sainsbury's, so would Tesco's, and they would all have to close. And then the next paragraph says, Albert Road also has its fair share of crime and ASB issues with drinking on the street, drug crime and violence being a concern. Our high street doesn't need another alcohol source. Well, people might agree with that and say, we think it doesn't need one either. That's why we're going to object. But that's not a relevant consideration. So people who are being encouraged to object to this by these Facebook pages and by the ones that follow, we don't know what the basis of their objection is, because we don't know if they're against sugar and junk food allegations, if they're against vapes, if they're against it on the basis that there's no need for another one. And Albert Road is proud, mainly independent businesses. We want to keep it that way. Well, they would know that this is not an independent business, which it is an independent business. So there's a lot of misinformation here. And in my submission, they've actually made their case worse by all of these things because they've confused the issue so badly. We would encourage as many local residents as possible to raise their concerns with the Council's licensing department. Perhaps share your concerns by emailing licensing. You can message hunter-gatherer for a draft email to send to oppose the application. And then if we go on to the next appendix, we can see that there's a photograph of the application for the premises license being displayed. Please help, double red exclamation marks. This notice has gone up at the window of the old Southsea Cycle Shop on the end of our parade of wonderful independent businesses. We do not need this type of business selling alcohol, high processed food and sugar. I mean, those are not relevant as far as licensing applications are concerned. And they're more concerning if we turn across the page to Appendix 3, which is an update from Hunter-Gatherer Coffee. We are truly grateful for all the messages of support and sharing this. Lots of you have asked how you can help, and the main way to help is to email the licensing department. We have a template for a letter which we can email if you DM us using your email address, which all you'll have to do is sign and send. You don't have to read it. You don't have to agree with it. All you have to do is sign it and send it. And it's, I think, hugely significant that whilst the notice for this premises license application went up on the 19th of December 2025, the 19th of December 2025, and this was produced on the 7th of January, there were no representations at all up to the 6th of January. None. But once this started, once people were told, just send me an email and we'll give you a form to send in, you don't need to read it, you don't need to agree with it, just send it in, because they're going to sell sugar, they're going to sell vapes, you don't need another store. Then the deluge started and they started coming in. And that's deeply concerning in my submission, that there were none at all in that 19-day period, and then a deluge of them after the encouragement on misleading information produced here. As well as encouraging the making of representations and providing the content of those representations, the information references matters that are not relevant for licensing, for example, selling high-processed food and sugar. It's not possible to know the basis on which these representations have been made and whether they're directed towards the licensing objectives. There's no supporting evidence from any of them, and they can only be accorded, in my submission, no evidential weight, because we don't know what they're based on, and they're not from the people involved. They're just sent out by the man from hunter-gatherers. And, you know, I don't know why, but I don't know if it's trade competition or whatever, but on this particular message that's sent out, which they've all 125, in addition, an independent health food shop is already open and trading successfully in the neighbouring unit, offering a positive health-focused service to the community. This is what hunter-gatherer have put in the objection letter that they've encouraged everyone to send in, mentioning their store. The Processed Premier store, which would primarily sell processed foods, sugary products, alcohols and vapes, offers no clear additional community benefit. So I'll leave you to think what you will of that. A number of objections are raised in the reps which are not matters for consideration by the licensing authority. For example, the need for another off-licence, the wish for independent traders, trade competition, more interesting businesses, the sale of sweets, junk food and vapes, and public health. Even so, the representations claim that all 4 licensing objectives are being undermined. So if we could look at each of the 4 licensing objectives. The first is protection of the public. Now, as we know, protection of the public only applies to their protection on the premises. And there's no evidence or suggestion of any problem on the premises. So that's not a valid representation under protection of the public. Secondly, protection of children from harm. There's no evidence to support the undermining of this licensing objective. Simply to claim that there's a primary school to age 11 opposite the shop is not evidence. There's no representation from the school. You'd think they would make a representation if they had concerns about this application. And Jenny Walker, her rep's on page 135, states she's objecting as a resident and as a school governor. She doesn't appear to be acting on behalf of the school governors. She claims that a shop in such close proximity to a school selling alcohol and vapes poses a threat to the physical and psychological well-being of children. Well, I don't know how she's able to come to that conclusion without any expert evidence or any qualifications. The normalisation of alcohol consumption, use of vapes, damages children's health. I don't know what's meant by the normalisation of alcohol consumption, but that's in a lot of these representations. And I don't know quite what normalisation means. That if a shop's selling alcohol, it's normalising the consumption of alcohol. Well, there are shops everywhere that sell alcohol. That next door to the premises is a restaurant, and that restaurant has a licence, and they sell alcohol, and people drink alcohol there, so are they normalising it? The hunter-gatherer shop, Mr. Mason's shop, they have alcohol licence occasionally. They apply for TENS, and they've had TENS in the past, and they've sold alcohol. So it's completely disingenuous to single out these one single premises for all of these issues and problems which say are arising. Ms. Walker is also critical of the sale of unhealthy products, fizzy drinks, crisps, sweets, and so on. Well, much as we might like to avoid all of those things, what's that got to do with an alcohol licence application? And significantly, there's no representation from the Children's Social Care and Safeguarding Service, which is the body that is competent to act as the responsible authority in relation to the protection of children from harm, and is the subcommittee's main source of evidence on such matters. So this licensing objective isn't engaged either. As far as children from harm is concerned, in respect to off-licenses, we're talking about underage sales, people coming in buying alcohol when they're underage. And we know these premises have got a brilliant track record because they've just recently, in their other store, successfully refused alcohol on 2 occasions in underage sales. So they should be congratulated rather than criticised on protection of children from harm. They've been actively promoting that objective. So the next licensing objective is crime and disorder. No evidence is produced to show that granting the licence would fail to promote the crime and disorder licensing objective. The police, as noted, are the subcommittee's main source of evidence on crime and disorder. They've made no reps in respect of the application. Additionally, the conditions offered are such as to ensure the licence, when granted, will fully promote the licensing objective. They were arrived at in conjunction with the police. It also has to be noted that the applicant successfully carried on licensable activities for some years, and as the DPS for 8 years has run other stores with earlier and later hours, 3 a.m. one of the stores, and those applied for, and has encountered no problems and no difficulties in respect of this or any other licensing objective. The last of the licensing objectives is noise. Stripping away the formulaic and duplicated representations and those addressing non-relevant issues, it is accepted that there are relevant concerns from a number of people of the possibility of an increase in lake light noise affecting nearby residents. And it's well put by one of the 3 councillors, not one of the 2 duplicated representations from councillors. Where is it? This is from a councillor, Susie. No, that's Zoe, Susie. Anyway, it's the Lib Dem Council for Central South Seed Ward. I'm not sure. I haven't got the name. I've only got part.
It's Susie Horton.
Okay. Well, she puts, she doesn't provide any evidence, but she puts a simple objection there. She raises the issue of noise in a reasonable way without bringing in any of the other sorts of issues. I wish to object in relation to the 3rd licensing objective, so good, focuses on the one that may be an issue. public nuisance, in that I feel the proximity of the parklet and extended alcohol sales to one may lead to additional noise and impact. May lead, not will need, not any evidence to support it, but just raising it as a concern, which I'm grateful for because it's a concern we should look at, in contrast to all of the other concerns, which are quite extreme and bring in so many different things that it's quite impossible to work out exactly what their main concerns are. So how about noise? Well, the noise from this business, if there is any noise, is going to be as people come in and out of the premises. It's not a disco, it's not a nightclub, it's not me noise in there with noise escape. And if we look at a photograph at the end of, I think there's some in the pack anyway, but there's a photograph at the end of Appendix B, I think it is, this one. And I don't know, Chair, if you and your colleagues are familiar with the row of shops there. And usually, because sometimes in these sorts of applications, the people who live above the shop might be disturbed by people opening and closing the door. There's nobody above the shop. They're single story. So the whole length of it, there are no residents going down that way into, well, it's the co-op at the end, and then I don't know if there are any residents there. And there are no residents opposite who are going to be disturbed by late night noise because that's the school which goes along opposite. So there aren't any residents there. There's, on the other side of the road behind, there's one house and then a church next to it, and then the road going down, there are houses there and there are houses at the back. But the noise would come, if from anywhere, from people coming in and out of the shop. And as Derek read out, the guidance says specifically that the store can't be responsible for any noise away from the premises. So if somebody gets in a car down there and slams the door, that can't be their fault. All they can do is try and make sure people don't cause noise at their premises, and that's what they're doing. That's why that condition is important about putting up the notice. The applicant is well used to running this type of business and has done so with no problems arising in his other stores. There's no evidence to support the view that the store will lead to noise that will undermine the public nuisance licensing objective. Concern seems to centre on possible noise as people enter and exit the store and the use of the parklet for consumption of alcohol. That's a little seat outside the store, which you can see, I think, on the photograph at the back. However, there are no nearby residents to the entrance to the shop, as can be seen by the photos on pages 161 to 2 of the Agenda Appendix B, and no evidence to show that the use of the store will generate noise and cause a public nuisance. Similarly, it's nothing more than conjecture, unsupported by evidence, that the parklet will be used in the way suggested. There's been no evidence in the past that people have been sitting there getting drunk or causing problems or issues or difficulties. Certainly none's been mentioned by the responsible authorities, and as far as I could see, nothing's been mentioned in the representations that people are concerned it may, but there's no evidence that it has. And again, significantly, there's no representation from the regulatory services, environmental health, and that's the responsible authority, which is the committee's main source of evidence on noise and public nuisance. So they're content with that. So these are the submissions. This is a carefully considered, entirely appropriate application from an experienced and responsible retailer to convert a rundown empty shop into a modern community convenience store. It represents significant investment and growth in the high street, an approach that is commended in the recently added paragraph to the statutory guidance. And this is from the guidance which was introduced in November 25. When making licensing decisions, all licensing authorities should consider the need to promote growth and deliver economic benefit. And this application clearly does that. The guidance also states, and Derek's already read this out, shops, stores and supermarkets should not be free to provide sale of alcohol for consumption off the premises at any times when the retail outlet is open for shopping unless there are good reasons based on the licensing objectives restricting those hours. It's significant that there are no reps from any of the RAs, and with the assistance of the police, conditions are offered aimed at ensuring responsible retailing and promotion of licensing objectives. When combined with the checks and balances put in place and the conditions offered, the balance plainly falls in favour of the application, and the subcommittee is respectfully requested to grant it. So that's our application. And we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I've actually got a question for Derek because it's propped up after you mentioned SIA staff and that the other places have SIA door staff. Could we find out if the other premises, is that out of choice or is that conditions they've got on their premises licence?
I can do some research while I'm sat here. Which one are you talking about? Tesco, Sainsbury and...
Yes, there was mentioned that the other ones already have...
Tesco, Sainsbury and...
they're the main two.
I think the Co-op doesn't, and I think the Co-op's the closest one to us, and it doesn't, I think. That's what I've been told.
If we could just double check, just because there was reference. I just want to know if it's choice or it's conditions on their licence. Members, do you have any questions for Roy? No?
Having read through the application, it appears that one of the unique selling points that the applicant is proposing is the provision of late night refreshment in the form of hot drinks and microwavable food between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. Obviously, if that is the unique selling point of the business, obviously other shops closing earlier than that or no other food being available, is that going to be intrinsically tied to the sale of alcohol until the same time, or would a earlier provision of alcohol finishing not impact the uniqueness of that late night offering? Sorry for the weird
No,
double
it's a good
negatives,
question. Right. Two things. First, late night refreshment is not going to be kebabs and burgers and takeaways and so on.
My reading of the application is that there will be things like pasties and microwavable snacks and a microwave provided. Yeah.
So it's not going to be a destination. People are not going to say, what should we do tonight, Saturday night? Let's go to the convenience store and have a... So it's not going to be one of those. Secondly, the alcohol sales. The guidance says that the alcohol sales, unless there's good reason not to, should be the same as the shop opening sales. And there's good reason for that, because if the alcohol finishes, say, at 12 and the shop opens till 1, then when people come along at 12:15, they'll say, oh, I want a bottle of wine or I want one of these. And the store will say, sorry, we can't sell it. And they say, well, you're open, aren't you? Yeah, we're open. We're open for everything else, but we're not open for alcohol. So it introduces something which is difficult to do. It's not impossible to do, because you can put shutters on everything and put everything behind. But it's probably wise to have both of them at the same time, which is why the government guidance says that that should be the case. And I don't think there's any link between late night refreshment and alcohol.
The reason we put in late night refreshments is that quite frequently, and I think that's the case in his existing stores, that you may get a taxi driver who wants a coffee and maybe something hot to eat, that sort of thing. And that's the reason why we've put it in. It's not intended to be a big draw to the area. It's just there as another added convenience to the business on top of all the other products and services he's going to be offering.
I mean, it does seem quite bonkers in a way, the way the law's developed now, that you could go in there up until 11 and you could buy a Coca-Cola and a cold pasty. But if you went in there at a minute past 11, it would have to have a license if you wanted to buy a hot pasty or a cup of coffee. It was originally intended to get burger bars and kebab stalls and things in the centre of towns, because research showed that people went into a town or city to drink, and they went to the 50 pubs. When they closed at 11, they went to the 10 nightclubs, and when they closed, they went to the 3 burger bars by the taxi rank, and then you got trouble generated there, so they had to get licenses for those. But for shops like this selling them, it doesn't seem, particularly as there was a case about what's the definition of heated. Do you remember with pasties, how hot they had to be heated and so on? So it gets a bit technical, doesn't it?
I've just got one more question. Obviously, you've come to the timing of 1 a.m. Can I just see, was a midnight closure ever explored, or was it just always wanted 1 a.m.?
Yeah, that's what he's applied for, and that's what he wanted. Yeah. Yeah, discuss with the police.
Members, any more questions? No. No? Objectors, do you have any questions for the applicant? Councillor Gerarda.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have a few. There was mention of promotional signs planned to be put up outside the shop to show what's on sale, including potentially bread, sugar and alcohol. I just wondered if the applicant has any mock-ups of these promotional banners that we could see.
No.
Have you got a picture of the other place?
No.
No.
Not the outside. Oh, yes, we have actually. On my
I'm just
phone.
having a look. I'm checking. I'm double checking.
I mean, we shouldn't get too up with sugar, because sugar is in many, many products. Yeah.
Well, I wish you'd
I
stop
think
mentioning sugar.
I think the reference is more the promotion of alcohol, I think, is what, and that's where she's probably wanted to see a photo. If you do have one, great. If not, no problem.
I think, as was pointed out by a member of our licensing panel here, Count Plain is very different to Southsea in terms of the types of issues, both positive things, but also a lot of negative, particularly in the way of crime and antisocial behaviour. So I just wondered if the applicant has spent any time in Southsea, particularly on Albert Road, to familiarise themselves with the issues and challenges faced there.
Yes, I have friend, so my friend will stay all the time there.
But how long have you spent there? How long have you spent at Albert Road?
It's per day about 8 hour shift, maybe.
No. How long have you known Albert Road in the evening?
Long time. It's about 10 years.
Where does your friend live?
Bromden Road, number 39. Bromden Road, number 39. Brompton Road. Yes. Yeah.
The applicant suggested that I was sharing misleading information because I mentioned that the store will be selling alcohol, vapes and processed food. But will the store be selling alcohol, vapes and processed food?
Yes, it will be, but it's misleading in terms of a licence application, because people who read that will think we're going to object to this licence application because it's been said that we should object to it because it's selling alcohol, vapes and processed food. If it had just said alcohol, it would have been fine. It wouldn't have been misleading. So it's not misleading factually, because they will sell all those things, but it would be misleading to somebody who read your Facebook page and thought they should object because they didn't want them to sell vapes and fast food.
I just wanted to clarify that I wasn't misleading the public by explaining what I was told by licensing officers and looking at the application, what was actually going to be sold in the store. And I just wanted...
I'm not saying you were intentionally misleading.
No, I didn't mislead.
No,
there was no misleading.
I'm not saying you intentionally misled them. What I was saying was that somebody could read that and think that they should have, if they didn't like vapes and they didn't like processed food, then they would object to the application.
Point is made. If we can move on to the next question, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, because it was mentioned multiple times and put in the written paperwork today, that I'm a fully fledged member of the licensing committee, and I'm not. It says clearly on my page, as a councillor, if you look it up, that I'm a standing deputy. That doesn't mean I'm a fully fledged member of the committee. That means in the instance that a Labour councillor colleague of mine can't attend a licensing committee, that I might be able to go in their place. I have not attended any meetings at all in that capacity. The last time I was a fully fledged member of the licensing committee was between 2021 and 2022, and I've not been a member, active member since then, just to clarify.
Thank you, Charlotte. Any more questions?
Yes. With refer to the safety measure of the shunt door, you would say you would use that to lock out potential criminals. You said that they would be known. How would they be known?
I didn't say criminals. I said anybody potentially of concern.
Okay, how would you know those people?
Because the shop would be trading at that time. Wouldn't necessarily know it from day one, but it'd be trading.
And then you mentioned the quite large amount of money being potentially going to be spent to upgrade the store. Do you have quotes for that figure? Or is that just, how have you reached that figure?
If we could keep the questions to the licensing objectives, please. Any more questions for these gentlemen? Yeah?
Just three, I think. The first one was in relation to, I think, the fair question from the panel about the locks on the alcohol units. And just to really be clear, the answer to will there be locks on these units, as I understand it, was no. Could I clarify that? A lot of words were said, but there wasn't actually an answer. It sounded like no. What was the question? Will there be locks on the units selling alcohol? like there are in the neighbouring places that sell alcohol?
What's the answer?
There will be no locks.
No, thank you. My other question is about the other store. It's a matter of public record that the application for the Cowplain Community Store was put in with a request for a 24-hour licence. As I understand it, that shop opens until 10 o'clock on Sundays, 11 o'clock Mondays to Thursdays, and 11:30 Friday and Saturday. Was that as a result of the licensing restriction or matter of choice?
Yeah, we reduce the hours because it's no customer. We we open until 3 o'clock, and after that, no customers. We reduce for 11 o'clock. That's it. No, nothing.
And what was the last question? I may have to come back to that when I'm making submissions.
No problem at all. And is it Mick? Have you got any questions?
Yeah, if we could just have a look at the site plan, please. So we've got different display cabinets highlighted in red, which I took to mean there would be the part of the store selling alcohol. But then there's a note on the plan which says all retail selling areas to be licensed for alcohol display, and the entire premises has a red line around it. So I'm assuming that if it's granted on that plan, that means that any part of the store could then potentially be increased to sell alcohol. Is that correct?
That could be.
So that's the ambition, yeah?
No, that's not the ambition.
Okay, well then why would you do it if that's not the ambition?
It's not the ambition, because if they decided to put the alcohol somewhere else, to move a gondola or to move something around, then they could do that. It's not the ambition. It's what they entitled. Well, I don't think it's the ambition.
Because obviously we've highlighted in red the warehouse area as well.
I'd presume that's probably because they're storing it and it gives them the ability to move the stuff
But that's
around.
not retail. You can store. That's not a premises licence matter.
No problem. Next question.
Just on this really, we talked about in the application, it says that it would be a modest range of alcohol to suit community demands. Just again, with the whole potential of using the whole floor plan as alcohol, whether that's still the phrasing that you'd choose to use.
Based on linear footage, alcohol forms less than 20% of the retail offer. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Less than 20% of the shop in linear footage is alcohol related. The rest of it is grocery and other services, sir.
Sorry, I'll just come back on that and then I'm done. But it's not if you've got the whole footprint as your premises, which is what the application says.
If it was decided to remove everything from the shop and fill it full of alcohol, then yes, that's the answer. But that's not the application and that's not the intention.
But it is the application with respect, because the whole premises are drawn as being able to sell alcohol.
Thank you. Right. Members, do you have any more questions? No? Okay. Right. I'm going to move on to other persons. Now, I don't mind who goes first. And I'm going to ask if we can try and keep it to 6 minutes each. That would be great. Who's got Charlotte? Yeah, perfect.
Thank you, Chair, and panel members for inviting me today as an objector to the application to grant a premises licence for Kev Albert Road Community Store. I'm a Central Southsea councillor, a local resident and a mum, and I'm objecting to this application with all of these hats. As one of the elected councillors for the ward of this unit, I received a significant number of complaints from local residents, parents, teachers and businesses regarding the proposed business and the application for a premises licence as soon as they saw the notice went up. So one of the main concerns from our community is about the vicinity of this proposed late-night alcohol, vape and convenience store being directly opposite one of Southsea's largest primary schools. At break and lunch times, school pupils play in the playground literally opposite the retail unit, with everything in that store being visible to children who are our most vulnerable and impressionable members of our community. A store that sells alcohol, cigarettes and vapes, items that are prohibited and dangerous to children, should not be situated directly opposite a primary school, and for clarification, that's children aged just 7 to 11 years old. With many of these types of stores, they have huge promotional materials in their shop windows to promote vapes and alcohol. I went down Fawcett Road and Albert Road and wanted to share some of the images of what I found on display so you can see how inappropriate a store predominantly selling alcohol, vapes and cigarettes would be placed directly opposite a school. So I'm just going to ask for this paperwork. Ben, please, could you pass it to the panel?
Can I ask the applicant, are you happy for this to be shared?
Absolutely, yeah.
These are of, so pictures of other sort of convenience stores up and down Albert Road. There's 4 copies of each. Messed up the order. That's all right. No, it's fine. They'll get the idea. Is it okay to pass them to the panel?
Yeah, you'll appreciate that before the hearing started, you were given the opportunity to read and examine the material that was
fine.
being produced by the other side and were able to object to it. They likewise have the same rights. So
Yeah, that's no problem. Okay.
there's no objection?
We'll just give them
Just
a
to
couple of
clarify,
minutes
no-
just to go through it.
Definitely no
Just
objection
waiting
from
for
that.
an...
Definitely no objection.
Okay.
It's just photos of other convenience type stores, basically, on Albert Road. And this is where a lot of our concern stems from. Am I okay to continue, Chair? So one of the core licensing objectives is the protection of children from harm. The granting of a licence to a late-night alcohol and vape store will not protect children from harm. To the contrary, it will expose them to the dangers of alcohol and vapes. They'll be forced to see, on their way to school, sat in their own classrooms and at playtimes from the playground, promotional advertisements for age-inappropriate products. As a councillor and as a council, we have a duty to fight to protect the most vulnerable people in our society from harm. But the location of this store unnecessarily poses huge risks for Southsea's young people. The evidence about the extent of the usage of vapes illegally by children in the UK is widespread. Indeed, all you have to do is ask any primary school teachers about its impact in schools and they will tell you. Schools are increasingly struggling with the issue, with many implementing stricter or more focused policies to manage the behaviour, but they are really struggling because the flavours of the vapes, the promotional materials, the packaging is all made to entice children to use them. They are meant to smell and look like sweets, and using them has a kind of cool factor. But using them is incredibly dangerous, as nicotine exposure disrupts brain development, harms lung health, and is highly addictive. Vapes often contain high nicotine levels equivalent to packets of cigarettes, risking rapid addiction. They cause lung inflammation, damage lung cells, and contribute to respiratory diseases such as bronchitis and asthma. Vaping amongst UK school children has increased significantly, with an NHS report finding 25% of 11 to 15-year-olds have tried it. Despite it being illegal to sell nicotine vapes to under 18s, 1 in 10 of this age group now vapes frequently, and 85% of teachers in this report reported vaping issues in schools.
Chair, I was just waiting for an opportune moment to interject. I've been prompted to do so. I can only reiterate what you've already been told by the licensing officer within the main substance of the report and introducing the matter. Vaping is not something that's currently regulated by the Licensing Act 2003. It's not likely to be. There's going to be a separate regime that is in train, but currently it's not something that you can take into consideration at all.
I just don't want you to have to waste your time, Councillor
Okay.
Jardwa, and just stick to the
Yeah,
licensing
I'll talk to the
objectives.
antisocial
I
behaviour
apologise
issues.
about that, but it really would be like
Yeah, no
trying
problem.
to throw seed on stony ground.
No problem, thank you. So another main concern raised by our community is about the proposed store exacerbating crime and antisocial behaviour. I really would encourage the applicant and the others that are here today to spend some time down Albert Road, because it has extensive ASB and crime issues, including drug dealing, drug taking, the presence of individuals drinking on the street, and the associated ASB from this. As councillors, we are working really hard with the police, the council's community safety team, residents and businesses to tackle crime and ASB hotspots. It is an uphill battle, but it's a critical issue to resolve for the sake of the safety of residents, children, and the performance of our local businesses and local economy. So a number of businesses on Albert Road are facing challenges around theft, vandalism, harassment, and persistent ASB that has led to some needing to change their opening hours, some losing custom and others moving out of the area entirely. And this very issue was discussed at our most recent full council meeting in December 2025, where councillors unanimously supported a motion that I put forward that acknowledged the ASB issues across the city, including on Albert Road, and called for greater action and focus to improve the situation for residents and businesses alike. What is more, there are many individuals in the area who suffer from alcohol and drug addiction issues, as there are a significant amount of supported housing on nearby Waverley Road. Many local people who are homeless or facing personal challenges utilise the Lifehouse charity on Albert Road too, and there are often rough sleepers outside several stores on the street. And unfortunately, the parklet that I played a part in installing outside the retail unit in question is mistreated by those with drug and alcohol addictions. I know because when I've walked by, I've seen individuals drinking there, chain smoking, littering. I've seen evidence of drug taking as well with leftover bags. 2 weeks ago, I had to pick up human excrement from the ground as well. So I'm very aware that unfortunately there are really serious ASB and crime issues in that area. A late night alcohol and vape store is only going to exacerbate this issue, causing more ASB and crime for local residents living in the nearby streets and for the other businesses on Albert Road. Another licensing objective is about the prevention of public nuisance and the prevention of crime and disorder. This proposed store will encourage more crime, disorder, litter, noise and nuisance in the area and generate more work for our hard-working police officers who already have enough challenges in our local area to deal with. So it's of serious concern, and there has been a number of specific criminal issues with these types of store. There's been a number that have been found to sell illicit tobacco and vape sales and counterfeit alcohol. There's been 2 such instances in the last year. So another store like this opening up on a high street where criminal business activity is present will generate more crime and disorder, and a store selling even more alcohol will only encourage more ASB and crime. We should be supporting our vulnerable residents to limit opportunities for them to drink, smoke and take drugs. And again, all this will be in the direct vicinity of a primary school. And although I'm just one person and I'm one councillor here today, I do represent the views of many people. This application has received 175 objections. I know the applicant is trying to suggest that these people aren't individuals, they don't, have their own views and they maybe just read things blindly and didn't think about it, but that's absolutely not the case. On a shared post that myself and Brian, the owner of Hunter Gatherer, had, we had 600 people liked our post. I've had dozens upon dozens of messages from people who are deeply concerned, and it includes parents, teachers at the school, pupils, local business owners and residents, many of which live in my ward. And my councillor colleague, George Fielding, as well as our city MP, Stephen Morgan, thinks it's the wrong location for this type of business. So local residents, business owners, parents, school children and civic leaders are calling on the council to make the sensible decision, protect our children from harm, protect our local residents from crime and public nuisance, and reject this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions for Councillor Gerardo at this time? Yeah, go for it, Councillor Hume.
As a licensing committee, we have to deal with hard evidence. What evidence can you bring forward to substantiate the suggestion that crime and disorder will be exacerbated by the opening of this particular shop on this particular site with this particular pattern? So what is the evidence that we have to hard evidence that it will exacerbate the problem?
A lot of that is going to come down to speaking to the police, and it would have been obviously helpful for them to tell you about the issues that there are on Albert Road, because they are numerous. And as somebody who lives and walks the area every single day of my life, I witness it every single day of my life, and obviously the people who've got businesses experience it too. So it would be the case of going to the police and talking to them about general increases in ASB and crime, and I know that there have been increases in ASB across Portsmouth in the last year.
If I might follow that up, but what is it about this particular application which convinces you that this will exacerbate the problem? I am well aware of the problem. I am a councillor for Albert Road as well, and have had altercations with shoplifters in the co-op. It's the exact that this particular application would exacerbate the problem.
Yes, it
Will
would.
it? How? What's your evidence?
It's because of the fact it's a late night alcohol, cigarette, vape, convenience store, and we know that there are individuals who have significant drug and alcohol issues that are, in particular, utilising the parklet on a daily basis, and this having another alcohol source literally there right on the parklet, which will also cause a public nuisance in terms of noise and disturbances, drug taking, literally in the parklet. The evidence that I have is, you talk to any of the police officers, they'll tell you that they've seen the issues. Any of the residents and businesses, I've seen it myself. As I've said, I regularly clean up the parklet and I find evidence of people that have taken alcohol, smoking. There's been cans of lager, little bags to suggest that they have been taking drugs there as well. So I don't have any with me.
Needles as well.
Yeah, I don't have any of those items with me, Councillor Mason, but I promise you I have put them in the bin.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you. Sorry, I've actually got some questions for the applicants arising out of things that Councillor Gerarda has stated. So I just want to clarify, and this is purely for clarification, the intention is that this will be operating as a Premier convenience store, and that's as a franchise holder of Premier, or similar sort of model of symbol group, yeah. So you'd be tied to Premier's national purchasing and marketing materials. So just asking as someone who worked in food retail in a convenience store for 10 years, specifically for the co-op, so I know how these retail trading agreements work in some ways, you would most likely have a fixed range that you can choose from for your items, and you would have a selection of marketing materials, and you can choose which of those marketing materials best fit your offer. So you're not going to be operating as an independent, specifically vape store, but you will have a vapes offer, and I can see from the plan that you're intending to have one unit behind the counter for vapes. Of the, I can't tell if it's 4 or 5 available units. Certainly 3 of them are highlighted for spirits, and there's one that seems to have some sort of speckling between the spirits and the vapes. Whether that's, I don't know what that one's intended for because it's not labelled, but it looks like it's between a third and a quarter of the a quarter and a fifth of the space behind the counter. The pillar.
The speckled unit is a pillar.
Okay, so it's 1 out of 4 units behind the counter for vapes out of the entire store, correct? Yeah, okay. And the rest of it, as we can see, is grocery, chilled foods. So the intention is not to run this as a vapes and tobacco store. Okay, thank you.
Derek, do you have an answer to my question from earlier? Thank you.
I do, yes. So in relation to both Sainsbury's and Tesco, it states that the licence holder at all times shall maintain adequate levels of staffing security. So it doesn't actually specify SIA, but of course, as you know, around the whole city, many shops and retail outlets now are employing security staff.
And as of this moment, sorry Derek, just to coming back to you, it's not currently a cumulative impact area, Albert Road.
No, it is not.
Members, any more questions for Councillor Droda? No. Do you have any questions for Councillor Droda?
Only one, Councillor. You said there are a number of stores selling illegal tobacco and vapes in that road, and a lot of criminal activity going on. You're not suggesting that the applicant's going to sell illegal tobacco and vapes, are you?
I was just trying to describe the criminal and ASB issues because I think there was a bit of a rosy picture about what Selsey might be like compared to Cow Plain. So I just wanted to explain what happens on Albert Road.
And have you reported these other stores to the responsible authorities?
Then these are ones that have been, raided already by trading standards and the police in the last year.
They're well on top of the situation then?
The councillors, they closed down for a period and then had their products adjusted and reopened.
So the police are well aware of all that criminal activity. And then when they were consulted about this application, they would have borne all that in mind, presumably.
I don't know because I'm not in contact with the police.
Thank you. Brian? Yeah.
So I've been part of this community for over a decade. So I'm speaking as a parent. My child attends Cranes Water School directly opposite the proposed premises. So I know the area well, not just as a place of work, but as a place where families live, children grow up, and people should feel safe. I want to be clear from the outset that my objection is not anti-business. As a business owner myself, I understand the importance of local enterprise and responsible trade. My concerns relate specifically to this application and its likely impact on the community, particularly in relation to the licensing objectives. So firstly, the prevention of crime and disorder. The area surrounding these premises already experiences issues with antisocial behaviour, particularly during the evening. Residents and local businesses have experienced noise, public drinking, intimidation, littering, arguments, etc. And there is a genuine concern that increasing access to alcohol in this location will worsen these problems. An off-licence so close to residential properties and a school environment risks encouraging street drinking and associated disorder. Secondly, the prevention of public nuisance. Those of us who live and work nearby already deal with this disruption, particularly later in the day. The proposed hours for alcohol sales raises concerns about increased footfall, loitering and noise outside the premises. And actually there are residents that live diagonally opposite the shop, above, I think it's Pompey on a Roll. So there are actual residents opposite, diagonally, the store. With the position of the parklets being directly outside the proposed premises, this would undoubtedly encourage these unwanted behaviours. This would have direct impact on residents' quality of life and on nearby businesses, as well as families living in the area. I've had a lot of residents from Henley Road, which are behind the shops, very concerned on a daily basis and asking kind of, what is going to be happening with this application. Thirdly, the protection of children from harm. Given that the premise is directly opposite a school that my own child attends, this is a matter of particular concern to me. Children and young people regularly pass through this area, and residents are worried about the impact of increased alcohol availability, street drinking, and the behaviours that can accompany it. This is not about fear-mongering, it's about safeguarding and setting appropriate boundaries and spaces used by children daily. The parklets were imagined as a space for friends, family, and community gatherings. However, the reality has been quite different. Litter, particularly from alcohol and drug use, vandalism and general antisocial behaviour are already visible. We do not want to see this increased and extended over a longer time period of the day. I would also like to note that residents and local business owners feel that there has been insufficient reassurance within the application about how these risks would be actively managed. While conditions may be proposed, enforcement often comes after problems have already arisen, leaving the community to deal with the consequences. In summary, my objection is grounded in lived experience as a resident, a business owner and a parent. I respectfully ask the committee to consider whether granting this licence is appropriate for this location and whether it would genuinely uphold the licensing objectives or risk undermining them. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Members, do you have any questions? No.
On the one hand, you give evidence as a parent of concerns about the school, yet the school has not expressed any concerns itself. Have you been in contact with the school on the matter? And if so, what response did you get?
I've written personally to Mr. Jones, the headmaster. I did not receive a response, but as a parent communicating with the school quite frequently, that's quite common. He's obviously a very busy man. We had heard that the school had sent something to the licensing committee. We didn't know that, we hadn't had that confirmed, so I'm not sure. And then obviously the lady Jenny, who's the school governor, has obviously written, not necessarily from the school's perspective, but as the school governor.
Thank you. Roy, do you have any questions? No? Okay. I'm going to move on to Jim now then.
Just a couple of points on the hearing note before I continue my speech. It mentions the store being empty for over a year, and I think it's probably not wrong to say it was empty last year and they vacated at the end of last summer. We've already had discussion about the Cowplane shop where a licence was applied for till 3 in the morning, and the reality was that it now shuts between 10 and 11, and I think that just points towards perhaps how that was misjudged, and perhaps this application in this shop might also be misjudged. We've heard talk of a wide range of products in this hearing note and in the application itself, but then we've had that qualified by an acknowledgement that 20% of the sales intended to be alcohol. We also have repetitions of the phrasing about these repeated same form objections, and I would simply say, as well as what Mr. Light says about how you can't take them into account, what you can take into account is that number of people share those objections, and I think that's a fair matter to say. On that, paragraph 23 states there are no nearby residents to the entrance of the shop. I would make a point of noting that the plan is actually intending to move the entrance to the shop to the corner of Henley Road, so further away from the business part of that road and closer towards the residential area that is Henley Road. And there are immediately opposite that, above the shop on the other side of Henley Road, a family with a young child, and immediately behind the shop a row of people who already suffer antisocial behaviour from misuse of the alleyway behind the shop. That's all I have to say about the note on provided this morning. I make my objections or my comments as a local resident, as a member of the community, and having sent my particular representations, which were submitted on the 14th of January, through my WhatsApp group to Henley Road residents to ask if they wanted to object or add anything to that, and I heard no objections from the responses, and I did have a number of other points raised with me. It's a burden both on the local authority to promote the objectives, but also to promote the key aim and purpose of providing the regulatory framework for alcohol which reflects the needs of the local community. I would like to make that point, and to ensure that it enforces the most appropriate licensing strategy. I will keep those points in the back of my mind as we go through this, this speech. I live on Henley Road. The proposed shop is on the south-east corner of our street. It's a residential one-way road, and residents are a mixture of families with young children and older residents living as couples or alone. there is a significant concern around public nuisance. Residents are very concerned about the rise in public nuisance that will come with a shop on the corner of the street selling alcohol and selling it all evening into the early hours of the morning. Whilst alcohol may be used by people in a non-disruptive way, the sale of alcohol late into the evening and early hours of the morning is likely going to be a significant contributor towards street drinking, related antisocial behaviour, and a cause of intimidation for people going around their business. The area. The busy end of Albert Road is where it meets with Elm Grove, the complete opposite end to where this licence is being proposed. Ours is quite literally the graveyard end of the street, marked by the Highland Road Cemetery. When you look, massive public record, the police crime figures, the east end of the street, largely in line with where PO5 becomes PO4, and the crime reports for Public Order Act offences and offences of violence bear out that significant difference between one end of Albert Road, which is heavily, densely populated by alcohol establishments, and the quieter end of Albert Road, which has significantly less alcohol-related crime and violence. There is a lower pattern of offences at our quiet end of Albert Road. All of the shops in this block are daytime retailers, with the exception of a restaurant, which has its last sitting at 9:30 p.m, and a co-op, which closes at 10 p.m. The area goes quiet at this time. Adding another alcohol vendor, in particular one aimed at evening and late night sales of alcohol, will likely directly feed into, I'll say it again, likely directly feed into an increase of problematic alcohol-related behaviour, nuisance and crime. The location. The proposed licence is a shop directly in front of a parklet created by the council some years ago now, and this is a space used by the community in general, often used by vulnerable members of the community, and sometimes by children. It will no doubt be adopted by evening and late night street drinkers if a licence is granted for the hours proposed. The shop will not be able to control the use of a place outside the premises on a public street. None of the measures agreed with the police address the likely risk either. The risk going from one end of being litter, broken bottles and other detritus, to nuisance, possibly violent behaviour, and certainly intimidation for our local community members having to walk past it, or for some residents having to directly overlook it. Neither the council nor the police are able to manage the likely negative impact on public space being used by late night drinkers and the related negative behaviour associated with late night street drinking. The shop itself, I've already stated in the application, it stated that a modest range of alcohol will be provided. We've heard acknowledgement that's going to be a fifth. I would suggest actually looking at the floor shop spaces was going to be slightly larger than that. Additionally, most of the alcohol is in the vicinity of the service counter, which essentially pushes the sale of alcohol. This suggests that one of the shop's primary aims is to sell alcohol. And I cite again concerns of the local community around the evening and late night, early morning sales of alcohol for consumption off the premises. A licence of this current proposal should not be granted without significant safeguards being put in place. Public safety. The location of the proposed shop, if a successful business, will increase footfall, likely be additional street parking in front of an area which is incredibly busy at school drop-off time and collection times. The walkway is narrowed directly in front of the shop due to the parklet. There's a bank of voice cycles on the other side of the pavement. On the opposite side, there is a recycling bottle bank, closed recycling area. A bus stop is a few metres down the road, and a school and church are also in the immediate vicinity. Unless the shop is a commercial failure, there will be an increase in hazards for both pavement and road. This is a particularly poor location for a premises of this kind. If there was a licensing strategy in the area, this would certainly offend against any strategy around public safety. Children. There are many children in the immediate area. Henley Road and the surrounding streets are residential, and there is a school directly opposite the proposed licence location. Children play in the one-way street that is Henley Road. Licensing a shop predominantly aimed at selling alcohol throughout the day, late into the evening and early hours of the morning will expose these children to an array of risks. Observing unacceptable behaviour of street drinking, hazards of broken bottles and other detritus from late night street drinking, witnessing or experience violence behaviour associated with street drinking. Any licence for this shop would need to address these conditions, limiting the hours selling alcohol to correspond with what goes on currently in the area when it goes quiet, imposing a reporting duty perhaps on the shop of anyone buying alcohol and immediately going outside and sitting and drinking it in the parklet. Perhaps limiting the times and number of children allowed in the shop as well. A change of layout, perhaps, and a reduction of the floor space allocated to alcohol sales to marginalise the prominence of alcohol, and certainly no signage or promoting alcohol sales on the external of the shop. The cumulative impact of adding another alcohol vendor to this area is concerning of itself and needs to be looked at in the light of a licensing strategy. I refer again to the locks on the alcohol unit, which are commonplace now in these grocery stores in Southsea. The entrance being moved to Henley Road rather than towards the Albert Road end is a terrible idea, and that increases the likelihood of nuisance to residents of Henley Road. There is a responsibility, as I say again, on the council to promote these objectives and a burden on the applicant to demonstrate that they discharge their obligations. We've seen, I've mentioned already, the crime and recent police raids that were reported last week in the news, where four shops of this kind in Albert Road, that is more than half of the shops of this kind in Albert Road, were shown to be breaking the law and selling illegal vapes and other matters. That is more than likely. It is more than 50%. So identical, I've finished my submissions there, thank you.
No problem, thank you. Could I ask, there's been a lot of reference about late night alcohol, late night sales. Had the applicant had the hours of, say, 11 p.m, would your objections still have stood?
They still go beyond the area going quiet, so to that extent, yes. Yeah.
And did you try and communicate with the owner at all before raising your objections to see if you could come to an agreement about what you'd be happy with as residents?
But in no way understood that I was able to do that, so no.
Sorry,
in no way I understood that any of us were able to do that. The process was simply shown on the sign on the window as make your representations and go to a hearing.
No, that's fine. Sometimes if you see the owner in, a lot of people, when there's new business coming up, you generally pop in, say hello, and sometimes you have the opportunity to do that. I wanted to know if you'd had the opportunity to do that.
He's not there, he's not
no
open.
problem.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to confirm, if it had been 11 o'clock, you still would have objected?
If it was 10 o'clock, probably not. But the points around signage and layout of the shop would remain.
Members, do you have any questions for Jim?
Yeah. You have mentioned problems with shops at the other end of Albert Road, and I can understand that. However, has there been any problem whatsoever with the licensed premises of the Festing pub? Because you have a rather large pub within very close to this area. Does that produce any problems?
Not in general. The Festing has its own frontage and has two corners going different directions, both of which are away from our road. It also shuts at 11. The Festing isn't a late night establishment. I'm not sure I'd want to be hanging out there at 11 o'clock, but it doesn't seem to spill out onto this side of Albert Road because there's nowhere to go. That row of shops is dead.
I do have a question for the applicant, actually, because there's been a lot of mention of the entrance being changed. Is that set in stone? Perfect, I did hear that. Planning application subject to that. So it might not be changing at all, the entrance. Does the applicant or anyone have questions for Jim at this time? Perfect. We will go on to Mick now, please.
Thank you. Just to start, I'm aware that placement and frequency of business isn't a consideration for the committee, but I think the context is significant and it helps in the understanding of the representations and also why I think a lot of people feel that the conditions offered are not sufficient. So within Albert Road, which is about 950 metres long, there are now 12 premises like this proposed application. there are 2 other Premier stores. The nearest one is 480 metres away. There are 2 convenience stores that open 24 hours already. Again, the nearest one is 380 metres away. And as has been mentioned, they're concentrated towards the Elm Grove end. So the concern is that by allowing an application further along the street for an area that's already well served with late night alcohol premises, this then acts as a magnet and moves those problems that we've talked about further down the road. Again, you know, the nearest premises, which is open till midnight, is 200 metres away. And again, already 2 Premier stores on there. Just to, again, remind everybody, the City Council statement of licence and policy notes that harm from alcohol may now be driven by low-cost off-sales and not necessarily by sales in pubs. And more visible harms created by drunken disorderly behaviour in the nighttime economy are also increasingly driven by preloading cheap alcohol from shops. I'm sure you're aware that's section 16. Further in the licensing policy, licensing law will always be part of a holistic approach to the management of the evening and nighttime economy in town and city centres. And I feel that's one of the things that quite a lot of people in their representations are trying to get at. So we talk about it being a community store in the application, but clearly the community don't want this in the area. I don't doubt the applicant's experience as a DPS, again, has been mentioned. I'm not sure that the experience in Cowplain is the same as Albert Road. Professor Light's submission seems to be that because there are well-founded concerns but they used a standard form, then they should be set aside. The committee may also have a different view on that. When in the paper that came in today, Professor Light talks about protection of the public. Obviously, the licensing objective is public safety, and the requirement is to ensure the safety of the public whilst they're on the premises. And again, you know, this relates to people who may be using the store and may be subject to antisocial behaviour from other store users. And similarly, the protection of children from harm relates as much to protecting children using the premises as it does to underage sales. Those are points that I made in my letter. I won't take you through the letter. I appreciate everybody's time, but there's some, as we've already discussed, the amount of the space used for alcohol sales makes it reasonable to describe it as an alcohol-focused retail premises. It isn't a general store, given that between 20 and 30% of the space is going to be used for retail of alcohol. And so the expectation would be, given all the context of Albert Road and that basis of trading, that the proposed conditions would specifically deal with that, specifically deal with those issues. And I think it's fair to say that they don't. Mr. Stone has very generously described the conditions as pretty standard. I go so far as to suggest they're pretty generic and don't do anything to deal with this location. Again, the committee will be aware that they're not able to offer conditions for the behaviour of people once they leave the premises. And if there is this concern that I think we all have, that this would be a magnet at this end of Albert Road for antisocial behaviour, the only option available to the committee is to refuse the objection because they're not able to condition it for the behaviour of people outside the store, regardless of how good the operator may be. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, any questions from it?
Could you expand a little on, I think it was almost the last point which you made, that this would be a magnet for antisocial behaviour, given that there are so many other shops of this, well, there are 2 other Premier shops and there are a number of other shops which have late licenses. Why would this particular one be a magnet for antisocial behaviour?
So if you are drinking in the late night economy in Southsea, at the moment, all the premises are concentrated towards the other end of of Albert Road. So the nearest next premises is 300 metres further down Albert Road. So it's a magnet in the sense that it's drawing people in that direction, which isn't a direction they've previously gone in when it was a bike shop or when it was some other use.
Councillor Brown, do you have any questions? No. Do you have any questions for Mick at this time? Okay, we are going to move into summing up now. Now, this is going to go to other persons first, and then obviously the applicant. What I will say is in your summing up, if we could keep it, again, as always, relevant to the licensing objectives, just because there's already loads, again, it's been quite clear we can't choose what goes there, and we can't do anything about the vape and tobacco until the government change that. So if we can just keep it to the late night alcohol and refreshments, I would really appreciate it. I will start with Councillor Drider purely, but normally go in order, but give Mick a break to gather his thoughts and we'll go back that way if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to express that as somebody who literally sort of just lives very near to the location of this store and someone who walks Albert Road every day, either as a pedestrian myself with my daughter or walking my dog. And just last night I walked my dog down Albert Road. I just wanted to emphasise the extent of the existing ASB and crime issues that run, as some of my fellow objectors have outlined, at the moment tends to be at the other end of Albert Road, where you've got more of a sort of late night offer, as it were, with more pubs and restaurants and that sort of thing. Just last night, as I was walking my dog, I was accosted by two individuals, one outside the Premier shop and one a bit further down along the road where there's a convenience store. There are individuals in the area who have complex needs, who have drug and alcohol addictions. There are rough sleepers, and they often position themselves outside these types of stores in the hopes that they can obviously try and get some food or donations from people. And actually, a lot of the community locally, do engage and try to support these members of the community. But an additional source of alcohol in a different part of a street, which, as others have explained, is currently much more quiet and residential, is absolutely not what we need. We do not need another late night alcohol offer in the area that will severely impact the residents and business in that area and generate new noise and become a public nuisance and another hotspot for crime and antisocial behaviour. There is already enough going on the road and enough challenges for the local police to contend with and that they're trying to deal with, that they don't need another opportunity for something like this, to occur in the quiet, what's known as the quieter part of Albert Road, which is generally quite peaceful. So I would ask the panel to bear that in mind, and as well as the fact that there have been 175 individual objections. These are local residents. You'll see from their postcodes that they're real people. They live locally. Yes, they may have decided to use, a template, but that shouldn't delegitimise these as individual people who have shared their concerns. I understand this to be quite a high level of, concerns to be raised and objections to be raised. And we know from talking to parents, teachers, and pupils of the school that there are real concerns about the impact that this will have on the young people who literally are opposite the location. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, got any more?
Charlotte's pretty much surmised everything that I feel.
No problem. Jim, do you have any more to add?
Just to revisit both the primary objectives, licensing objectives, but also that key aim and purpose of providing that framework reflecting the needs of local communities and the licensing strategy. I would submit that if neither that nor the burden on the applicant showing they can discharge those objectives can be set out, then there are real problems with this committee granting the licence in the shape it currently is.
Thank you. Mick?
Thank you. It's reasonably foreseeable that an alcohol retail-focused operation in this location will attract customers who are already drunk and who wish to purchase more alcohol, particularly in relation to the proposed late-night opening hours. Whilst the applicant's staff would undoubtedly refuse service, this does not remove the potential nuisance problem or disperse customers from the locality. The application does not offer any specific measures to promote the licensing objective in relation to the location, or measures to mitigate the impact of being open later than other similar venues in the same general area. And they're unable to provide conditions to deal with the impact of people in the neighbourhood because simply that's not their role. So I believe that given that and given the stated licensing policy of the council, the only option is for the committee to refuse this application. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Now I'm going to move to the applicant, but I just want to, because I know what legal advisor will say, because there's been a suggestion of obviously door staff and possibly time change. If you are able to, maybe at the end or the beginning, put your comments on how that would make you feel, and if you would accept them, etc., just because obviously that has been mentioned in the committee, and we would have to pull you back to say that we might be thinking that. So I'm just adding it now so you've got time to think about it, all right?
For that, Chair. The first thing I'll say is that people have come along here today and they've put their concerns to you genuinely, and I appreciate that. They're not licensing experts, although we'll talk about that afterwards, whether the councillor does know anything about that or not, and therefore they wouldn't know that need isn't a criterion, and they wouldn't know perhaps that vapes aren't included in those sorts of things. Similarly, we've just been told that the burden is on the applicant to prove that we won't cause any problems. Well, that's not right, as you'll know, and I'm sure as your legal advisor will tell you. It's a permissory system, so if there hadn't been any representations, the licence would have been granted without the need for a hearing. There's a hearing to allow those making representations to convince you that you shouldn't grant the licence, or you should change the licence, or you should put conditions on the licence. It's for them to prove it, and not for us to disprove it. But clearly we need to respond to the matters that have been raised, which is what we'll do. First of all, there's public safety, and it is quite clear that public safety relates to what happens in the premises, not what happens outside premises. So it's just not, it's a non-starter as far as this application is concerned, because this is a shop which is going to be well designed, well thought out. There's nothing from the police or anybody, or the fire service or anybody else to say that there's a problem or an issue with the premises. And there's no allegations of any dangerous things going on in the premises. So in my submission, that's a non-starter. Secondly, as far as children are concerned, we're told that the school opposite is the big issue. For a lot of people who've made representations, we're particularly concerned because this isn't appropriate opposite a school. Vapes, junk food, sugar. Well, of course, vapes, junk food, sugar, not of any concern to us. Alcohol and the normalisation of alcohol. Well, is the school, presumably the school's expert in this, is the school, what have they got to say about it? Well, the councillor asked Mr. Morden whether he contacted the school, and he said he'd written to the school about all of this, and written to the headmaster, I think it was Mr. Jones, and got no reply. So if this was a serious issue for the school, Mr. Jones would have replied, Mr. Jones would have put in a representation, Mr. Jones would have said something about this. Mr. Jones, the headmaster of the school, even being specifically put on notice about this by one of the lead objectors to this application. I haven't seen the letter he wrote, but perhaps it was in the same terms as the letter he wrote for everybody else to send in. That's significant, I think, as far as this committee is concerned. Bearing that in mind, the applicant, should you grant him the licence, will bear in mind that there's a school opposite with what he puts in from in his window display, what he puts on there. And as your other councillor said, with a Premier store, you get a choice of different things that you want to put in. And I passed a note back and forth, so he'll be conscious of the school opposite when he decides what to put in the window. Even though that isn't really a consideration, he'll go that step to try to assuage some concerns, which I'm sure are genuinely held, but don't come within the licensing objectives. So as far as that's concerned, that's a non-starter. Underage sales clearly are important, not for that school because they only got to age 11. Hopefully they're not trying to buy alcohol under age 11. But we've got the 2 test purchases that they passed successfully, so it shows he runs a tight ship. And don't forget the policeman in uniform also was refused because he makes sure he sticks to the rules and regulations. Then as far as crime and disorder is concerned, there's a concern about that and all sorts of issues that could arise. And Councillor Mason did say to Councillor Garada, what is it? You know, what's the evidence you've got that this particular shop, in this particular position, doing what it wants to do, will exacerbate the situation as far as this is concerned? And her reply was, you need to speak to the police. It's late night alcohol, cigarettes and vapes, which are the problem. The evidence I have is talk to any of the police officers and they'll tell you what it's all about. Well, the police haven't objected. The police have been given the application. They've looked at the application. The police are well aware of the application. They are aware of the position of this shop. They are aware of the person who's going to run this shop. They are aware of how this shop is going to be used and what's going to be sold in it. And they're aware of the crime statistics and everything else to do with that road, the quiet end of the street, the noisy end of the street, and so on. And they've said, we need to tweak your conditions. Denigrating them as being normal conditions doesn't really help. They're conditions which the police felt were suitable conditions, and the police have put those on the licence. We've added the other one back in that was missed, which is about making sure you leave quietly when you leave the premises. So that's a non-starter as well, we would say. Then as far as nuisance is concerned, public nuisance is concerned, that the noise, and contrary to what one of the people making representations said, and again, they don't know licensing law like perhaps we should know it, if there's not a possibility of a condition telling the shop to stop people making noise down the road, then you should refuse the license. Well, that's not the case, is it? The guidance tells us that you shouldn't expect the shop to stop people down the road making a noise because that's beyond their control, and I'm sure your legal advisor will tell you that and read that out to you in the first place. But clearly, they're going to put a notice up in the shop. They're going to tell people to leave quietly. They've got cameras outside to keep an eye on what goes on. And if there are rough sleepers and people who come along trying to use the premises who are troublemakers, then not only will they not serve them, but they won't allow them in the shop again. They'll be stopped from coming in the shop. They've got their shunt lock if they need to utilise that. Phone the police if they have to phone the police. If they do have any of these issues arising, they've got the methods of dealing with it. They've also got a condition you may have noticed of no alcohol above an ABV of, I think, 6.5%. So the rough sleepers that Councillor Gerardo is quite rightly concerned about, they won't want to come here because they don't want to buy this sort of alcohol. They want to buy the high percentage alcohol, which is cheap to buy, and Premier stores don't do that sort of thing, and they're not going to sell anything above that anyway. So looking at it all in all and in the round and recognising the concerns, but also being concerned that, you know, where there are 175, it's not just a basic add it all up and decide where to go, because 175 times 0 is still 0. So I'm not saying there's nothing in any of those representations, but just the huge number of them doesn't mean anything when you start to look at them and see in the way in which they were put together. I mean, it's disappointing that when the letter was sent out, the email was sent out to people and saying, just sign this and send it in, it didn't actually say, read this, if you agree with it, sign it and send it in. Oh, here it comes, yeah, just forward. And some of them are forwarded. You can see they're forwarded at the top of the email. So that's not a properly thought out representation, is it, by any standards? But there is one from one councillor which I accept, said there may be an increase in noise, and that's what we've addressed, and hopefully we've addressed that to your satisfaction today. And we ask you to grant the licence. Now, as far as SIA staff is concerned, they will train up somebody to SIA standards if required. There are two reasons, I think, as far as SIA are concerned. The first is if you're getting drunks coming in, causing trouble and fights late night, you need the SIA to sort of stop that sort of behaviour. Or in more modern day life, I think, sadly, it's to try and stop people shoplifting. And it depends which of those two you think they need the SIA staff for. And if you do need them, then you need to think about what hours, because it costs money to have an SIA person. If they're going to have two people in the store, they can train one up, and one's qualified SIA and one's behind the counter. So if that's suited, then that would be a way towards that. So that's that. The shop window, as I say, they'll make sure that they're conscious of what has been expressed today about that, and they'll take into account all of the things that were said today. And concerns about vapes and so on, we all share, but it's, as we know, not part of what's going on today. All of us with children and grandchildren share that concern. but it's not what we're talking about today. And then the other thing you asked me about was the opening hours. And as demonstrated by one of the people making representations, the applicant's other store was licensed till 3. When it turned out it didn't need to be licensed till 3 because he wasn't getting the trade, he pulled it back. The same thing will happen here. If it's licensed till 1 and he doesn't get customers till 1, then he'll pull the hour back to 12 or to 11 or whatever it is. But he needs to have that hour. That's what he wanted to put in. So he would ask you to grant that if that was possible, please. Sorry, Mr. Baker's determined for me to say something about the layout. I'm not quite sure what he wants me to say.
I designed it.
Will you tell us what you want to say about the layout?
When we design shops, we discussed this with the applicant, we tried to keep the alcohol so it's clearly visible from the counter. So anybody browsing the alcohol displays can see, we can see people browsing rather than being hidden behind a fixture. So that's why the spirit's behind the counter, because of their obviously higher alcohol content. But the main displays are visible from behind the counter and are covered by internal CCTV cameras if there's any minor blind spots. As for the quantity, it's not 20 to 30%, as one of the councillors said. It is actually 20% or less than 20% of total linear footage, not the actual bays.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baker. And all the other thing I would ask you is to have a look at the submissions that are in my note from paragraphs 25 to 28. I won't read them out again, but unless you've got any questions, that's our application, Chair.
No, I'm going to ask if all parties are satisfied and have said everything they wish to. Perfect. So we are going to move into closed session. Time, Ben? 15:15? 45 minutes?
I think as a bare minimum 45 minutes, yeah.
Okay, we'll say 2:30 then.
I think that's probably more realistic. So the subcommittee will retire until 2:30 at the earliest. It may take longer, but everybody can be confident, secure in the knowledge that it won't reconvene before 2:30, so you can go away, happily get something to eat and stretch your legs, see to parking, whatever. As I say, it may well take longer. They obviously need to make their decision, formulate their reasons, and then have that transcribed, but it will be at least an hour.
It's also being live streamed, so if anyone does need to go home, you will get to see the end result. I'm just conscious of children needing to be picked up. If you do see us outside, we're not ignoring you. We are not allowed to communicate with you. All right? Thank you very much.